Last year, I made a video about the demo of MIO Memories in Orbit, overwhelmingly praising it because of how much it had impressed me. Therefore, it was my most anticipated Metroidvania for this year. As its release day approached, I was anxious if the finished product might end up disappointing me. I reached out to the developers to get a review key, which I didn't get, so all I could do was watch reviews of the game, which started coming out a day before release. And they got me a little worried. Most reviewers made a point that the game doesn't have enough checkpoints. After buying the game and playing it myself, I actually disagree with that. I think the number of checkpoints is fine.
I'll explain it to you.
This is how the checkpoint system works here. You explore and find these structures to which you can attune, kind of like a bonfire in Souls-likes, which refills your health and works as a respawn point. When you first discover one of these structures in a new location, they're usually missing an overseer, whom you must discover by exploring the surrounding area. Discovering the overseer enables fast travel to and from these checkpoints. While I agree that these checkpoints are far from each other, but to save you from the tedium of running back from a checkpoint to a difficult platforming section every time you die, the devs have strategically laid out these Naker basins very close to these challenging sections. These basins refill your health in exchange of currency, or if you have a specific modifier equipped, then healing in these basins is free. Every time you get hurt during a platforming section, you respawn close to these Naker basins, which means you can refill your health to the max and keep trying without dying and going back to the checkpoint. So I think the argument that there aren't enough checkpoints, which essentially means that there aren't checkpoints close to challenging sections where you're going to die repeatedly, is not very strong. As someone who dreads platforming and is generally not very good at them, I enjoyed about 99% of the platforming sections of MIO that you encounter on your way to getting the default ending, even though a lot of them are very tough. The energy meter is what, in my opinion, makes platforming so engaging. It's used every time you pull through these green things, or glide, or spider walk, and gets recharged if you strike anything or stay on the ground for a very short time. What I liked about the platforming in this game is that they are primarily puzzles about figuring out the correct sequence of points you need to touch in order to recharge your energy so you can keep going. Through trial and error, you create an optimal roadmap, and on your final attempt, you just follow it. Of course, timing and reflexes are important too, but by the time you figure out the correct sequence of things you need to do, timing and reflexes come with the flow automatically. Not all sections are the same though. I can think of these two sections from the top of my head, where in this one, although the Naker basin was very close, therefore I could try the puzzle without having to die and respawn, but the super thin margin of error felt very annoying, and when I was able to overcome it, it felt like I took advantage of some kind of a glitch, as opposed to taking a route that was actually designed. In this one, I don't know why my jump just didn't reach that platform, but I kept trying and eventually I was able to reach there by what felt like an accident. Again, despite being very weak at platforming, I thought the difficulty of them in this game was just right, and I thoroughly enjoyed completing these challenges, which is great because MIO is a very platforming and exploration heavy Metroidvania. While there are some lockdown combat arenas which might take more than one attempt, the enemy encounters in general I found to be on the very easy side. Except the bosses though. The boss fights in this game are top tier. They have interesting visual designs, varied attacks that are fairly telegraphed, and together with MIO's extremely nice feeling controls, fighting these bosses feel like you are Jackie Chan doing choreographed Jackie Chan stuff. So far, 9 Souls in my opinion had the best collection of bosses. MIO has just topped 9 Souls in that respect, as except 2 of them, every single boss fight in this game was extremely memorable, fun experiences. The 2 bosses I didn't enjoy are Saw Long, because it's one of those gimmicky chase sequence bosses where it's a platforming gauntlet veiled as a boss fight, which I usually never enjoy on account of my lack of platforming skills, and Sol and Vin, who despite having the same fun to fight factor of other bosses, I couldn't enjoy fighting only because they take all your active health in one strike, which means throughout the whole long fight you can't afford to get hit more than once, which I found a bit too demanding. Even though I didn't like these 2 bosses, I would say they are definitely not unfair. It's just I personally couldn't enjoy them. But yeah, if you like boss fights, MIO definitely takes the crown of having no bad bosses, and I think the game desperately needs an option to replay boss fights. I hope they would patch it in soon.
But that's simply not possible.
Why
Not, you stupid bastard.
Starting from the beginning, at various points the game initiates these cutscenes where MIO goes through a heart attack and everything becomes angelic white and she loses one health chunk permanently. The more you explore, the more you'll encounter these cutscenes and the more health you'll lose. At first I thought the game is trying to be Demon Souls or Dark Souls 2, and even though I found it annoying, I thought there must be some way to reverse it. But no, this health reduction is absolutely permanent. So essentially, the more you'll play the game, the weaker you'd become, and the game basically punishes you with health reduction for being curious and exploring. You of course can find health upgrades to counterbalance it, but then it basically means your health remains the same all throughout, and often the extremely challenging sections you overcome to obtain health upgrades just feel artificial and meaningless. However, as long as you keep exploring and finding health upgrades, the difficulty remains manageable, and ultimately this health reduction gimmick didn't make the game too frustrating. But still, I just thought it's a dumb gimmick and shouldn't have been included in the first place.
Don't like that.
Okay, so MIO's boss fights are super fun, platforming is challenging but fair and enjoyable, exploration and level design are exceptionally good due to the game having this organic, handcrafted visual style which allows it to hide secret pathways in ways that feel very satisfying to discover. On 3 separate occasions, I discovered very large areas simply because I was curious and observant. Although 2 of these areas were totally optional, being able to discover them on my own did feel rewarding all the same. And not to mention, the music in this game is extraordinary and how it's implemented is just too good. Even though I wasn't paying any attention to the story, just the pairing of the visuals and the music evoked some visceral emotion from me, which is very rare, especially from a 2D metroidvania. After you get the default ending and roll credits, if you click continue from the main menu, you are brought back to the last checkpoint before the final boss fight. You can choose to not fight the boss this time and instead pursue the true ending, which is what I did, but in my way to reaching the true final boss, the game's platforming difficulty kind of abruptly started feeling super high. Especially in this section called the Crucible, you'll have to overcome 2 very long drawn platforming gauntlets whose difficulties were dramatically higher than any area I had to go through in the first playthrough. Also, because I was on a mission to leave no locked doors or areas behind and clear out the whole map, I discovered multiple areas that seemed to be completely optional, but they were unusually more difficult than the rest of the game. We have of course seen a similar thing but in a much larger scale in Silksong, where you get the default ending in Act 2, but then the whole Act 3 and true ending, which contains another 10 to 15 hours of content, are locked behind some extremely difficult bits. All this kind of got me thinking, should games, especially metroidvanias where the primary hook I assume is the exploration driven by the player's curiosity, lock such large volume of content behind skill ceiling that a general player does not simply have? I understand some parts could be gatekept like that to reward the more skilled players and even to incentivize the average player to maybe replay the game, etc. But how much of a game should be essentially made inaccessible like that? What kind of content should be kept behind these difficulty gates? Just extra lore or actual levels or bosses? Am I just a crybaby who needs to stop complaining about higher difficulty and just get good?
Yep.
Does it bother you like it does me that given you only have a limited time in a day to play games and your skill level is average, you would most likely never get to experience a significant portion of these games? Please comment and let me know what you think about it. See you in the next video.